Guys, what's up? It's Kanye and welcome to my how to improve your code video. So in this video I'm going to talk about how you can make your classes simpler and cleaner, and some strategies and methods on how you can achieve that. So hey guys, what's up? It's Kanye, and in this video I'm going to talk about how you can improve your classes by using some methods to simplify them and make them easier to reason about. So to kick things off, we got an employee class here. Just some explanations so you guys understand what's going on. So we got a constructor with a name, age and position argument, or parameter in this case, and I'm just going to apply those to the class variables. Pretty basic stuff. Then I got 4 get methods: get employee name, employee age, position and salary. Those 3 are pretty straightforward. They just return the name, age and position, and the employee salary is using the calculate salary method, which is here, to calculate the salary. And in the end I'm going to instantiate the class by making a Michael employee, giving it the name Michael, age 30, and apparently this guy is the boss of the company, so he is the CEO. Okay, so pretty basic stuff. And once you've written this class, you're like, okay, pretty easy to understand, I'm done. Well, actually no, there are actually some improvements you can make if you analyze a bit of your classes. So one improvement you could make, for instance, is, let's look at the constructor. So you're gonna see that the constructor has 3 parameters, and usually the rule is to have between 0 and 3 parameters per function. And they also, well, the rule also applies to constructor, because the constructor is essentially also a function, but no more. If you get more parameters, the function, or in this case the constructor, becomes harder to reason about. Let me make an example. So let's say you want to add the zip code as a parameter, because you want to get the address of the employee and maybe also the country name, because maybe it's an international company and you also need the country where the person is coming from. So now you have 5 parameters, and it's kind of starting to become messy now, because if you want to instantiate the employee, one employee, you actually have to make some mental mapping and you have some cognitive load, because you need to remember what order the parameters are in, if that makes sense. So let's say we got a zip code 2 and the country, let's just say it's USA. And now you have to make some mental mapping to know, okay, first of all the name, then the age, then the position, zip code and the country. If you don't have this class here, which most of the time you don't because you import it from some other file, you're not going to know what kind of parameters and in what order you can pass them in. Well, you will probably know the parameters, you know, okay, the name, the age, etc., but you don't know the order. So one method, there are multiple methods you can refactor this, is to make one parameter. For the sake of simplicity, I'm keeping those 3. I'm not going to add the zip code and the country. And what you can do is, instead of passing each individual parameter as 1, you can pass in an object and just spread the object inside the constructor. So you can say person name, person age and person position. So what this is going to do is it allows you to make the instantiation more descriptive for you as a developer, because now you can say name Michael, age 30 and position CEO. And now you're like, oh yeah, alright, of course, I got an employee and it has a name, an age and a position. And now all of a sudden it's a lot simpler to understand how the instantiation is working, because you just pass an object and it's more descriptive because you have all these properties, which are basically variable names to you. So yeah, that's one way of improving this. There are of course multiple ways to improve this. You could make this, like if it starts to grow into multiple parameters, let's say you have like 10 parameters because you have 6 or 7 dedicated to the address, then you could make this a second class and instantiate a class inside this constructor, which is also one way there, but there are multiple methods to achieve that. Okay, so that's one refactor done. Let's go to the next. So the next bit, which is kind of something that JavaScript really doesn't have, is assertions. So let's say, for instance, it's important for you or for the company to make this class kind of bulletproof. So it shouldn't have like undefined values, and if it has an undefined value, then it should kind of like make a note, like it should notice you that something is wrong or something is missing, maybe throw an error or something like that. And you can do this with assertions. So assertions basically are constraints you can use in classes and functions when you, for example, in this case, instantiate something. You could say, for instance, if the name property in the person object is missing, then throw an error and tell me, okay, the person.name is missing, okay, or if person age is missing, or if it's too short, or if person age is not data type number, etc., etc. Okay, and to do this in JavaScript, we actually have to do a little bit of a workaround, which is to use if statements. So in this case, we have a person name. Okay, so we're gonna say if the person name is falsy, and falsy values are, for example, null, undefined, 0, empty string, etc., then it's going to throw an error and say, okay, the error will be employee class error, person name is undefined. In that case, it should be falsy, but you get the point. So if we try this, so we're gonna run this code, and I'm actually going to console log the employee Michael. Then you can see we got the object working. So now if we remove the name, you will see that it's actually going to throw an error, and it's going to say employee class error, person name is undefined. So this assertion is actually working, and it's kind of like a way to tell you as a developer that something is wrong, because otherwise this would work. You can pass undefined or null into the name, and JavaScript would still say, oh, there's no problem, and that's not good behavior. It's really not good, especially in enterprise software or in bigger code bases. You want to have some error handling, in this case some assertions. So to make this consistent, I'm just going to get this back, and I'm going to also add the assertions for the age and for the position like this. So if any of those is missing, then it's going to throw the error. Very nice. So that's the second thing, assertions. So now the third thing. So there's also a rule that's not exclusive to classes, which is that you shouldn't repeat the context of the name. So what does it mean? So it means if you got, for instance, we got a class which is named employee, so it's an employee class which is doing employee stuff like calculate the salary, etc., getting the name, because it's probably a person which is an employee. What you want to do is you don't want to repeat the context. So if we look at these get methods, you can see that we have 4 of them, and all of them say get employee, get employee, get employee, get employee. Like 4 times we repeat employee. And employee in this case is repeated because we already know out of the class context that this is an employee class. So we actually don't need to repeat this. So if I, let me show you, just let's take the employee Michael, and we're gonna get the name like so. Let's just clear the console. Let's run this. You can see it works, but it's kind of like you're like something is wrong there, you know, like you read employee 2 times. This is also actually flawed, but I get to that in a bit. So what we can do is we can get rid of the employee, because you already know out of the context this is an employee and Michael is an employee, so we can just say get the name of the employee. You don't need to say get employee name, that's just unnecessary. Okay, and we can do that for all of these methods. Let's get rid of them. There you go. Now it's a lot more simpler. It's also like there's less visual noise for you. Okay, there's a thing called visual noise, which is when you don't have, like, for example, if you don't have white space between your code and like for loop or something like that, if you define like the iterator, etc., it's like, it's really like kind of like hard to understand like in a glance what this for loop is doing, etc. So it's actually nice now because you have less visual noise for your eyes, and it's easier to reason and faster to reason about this. Okay, and if we do get name, it's still working, as you can see. Okay, nice. So I said I'm going to come back to this. So this is also problematic because as I said, you already have this context of the employee. So employee Michael is also unnecessary because you already know Michael is an employee. So you can actually get rid of this too. Okay. So you know, okay, if you read this, you're like, okay, we got a variable named Michael, it's probably a person, and it's, okay, it's an employee person. Oh, got it. And he has a name, he has age and his position. Oh, of course, and he's the CEO, the boss of the company. Of course. And if we now look at this code here, it's a lot simpler. It's like half the line that was before. It's huge. Okay. And it's easier to read and reason about at the same time. So win-win situation. Right. All right, we got this. So one more thing I want to stress a bit, which is the calculate salary method. So I'm not going to go into the code block because you can for sure refactor this multiple times and make this a lot better, a lot more flexible, more performant, etc., etc. What I want to stress out is the name of the method again. So there's a thing, a principle, which is called having public and private methods in a class, and also members. The thing in JavaScript is you always have public methods. All of these methods can be accessed from outside. So I could say calculate salary, like so. If you run this, you can see we get this beautiful number. I wish I would get so much money. But you can see that we can access this method from outside, but it's not intended to be accessed from the outside because the get salary is the method that is intended to get the salary from this class. As you can see, we're gonna use this calculate salary. So what we want to do instead, you know, if you look at like strongly typed languages like Java or C++, you have private methods, and there are private and public fields. If you use, for instance, TypeScript, that's baked in. There's also type checking, and you know, it's a strongly typed language. It also catches the errors at runtime. But this is normal JavaScript, so we have to think a bit around. So what we can do is people started to do some encoding in their names. What does that mean? So encoding basically means that you hint what kind of method or variable you're going to hint is. So if we're gonna say, okay, what people used to do is, okay, get name, it's probably a string, but we don't know for certain for 100%. So what people used to do is they mark this with an S or with a like str to say, okay, this is a string, it's returning a string. But people don't do this anymore, because if you do right naming, then you will almost never have this problem, because from the variable, from the method name, you already know, okay, this is probably 100%. This must be, if it's a name from a person, then it's probably a string. Okay. So for methods, however, there's still some practice done to mark them as private, and the way you do this is by doing an underscore, like so. So what this indicates is, even though there's an underscore, you can still access this. I'm just going to demonstrate. You can see I can still run this method, but if some person, like imagine you work at a corporation with a lot of developers, or maybe it's future you and you haven't looked at this class for like, I don't know, a month or two, you probably forgot all of this, and it's probably also going to be a lot bigger than this. You know, if you see something like this, this is a method that isn't supposed to be accessed from the outside. Okay? And that's really important, because you will have a lot of methods in a class. You have 10, 15, 20 methods, and you need to mark them for yourself and also for your coworkers that this method is not supposed to be accessed from the outside, which is, trust me, it's really important. You will notice when you get more experience that this is a really nice thing to do. Okay guys, yeah, that's about it for today. I think I covered some bits that are very helpful. We covered how you can use objects to spread them inside your constructor to make the parameters more easier to reason about. You also learned a bit of basic assertion, and also how you can name your stuff better, the methods, etc., and also how to make or how to hint that something is private. And maybe I'll do a follow-up video or like a couple of videos where I go into more rules, because there are a lot of rules you can apply. But for today, that's it. If you liked the video, if you liked the content you saw, I would be happy if you subscribe. I would be happy if you share it with your friends, tell them about it. If you comment it, if you have some feedback, make sure to comment. But other than that, thank you very much for watching, and see you then. Bye.